Exodus 3, verses 1 through 15. I actually left the reading that Pastor Leanne had sent me on the back table there. That's why I was doing sign language to Mike, but he didn't understand it. I'm sorry.
Hey, 10 people together do your job.
No, it was on my It was on my table, and I grabbed one and didn't grab the other. Pastor Leanne had sent me a couple of things I didn't get by email until they didn't come through, so she sent them to me again last night. So, again, it's Exodus 3, verses 1 through 15, and this is actually a monologue that was written for those verses. So it starts out, have you ever wondered what Moses must have been thinking when he came up to the burning bush? Think about it for a minute. Here he was with a new family, a new son, and a new flock of sheep to tend. And he goes up to this mountain and he sees a burning bush. It doesn't seem that odd, except that it never burns up. It just keeps on burning and burning. Now Moses must have been like, okay, what's the deal with this bush? It's kind of freaking me out here. Maybe I should go over there and see what it is. Now Moses seemed fairly confident that this bush was basically safe. It's just a bush, right? But then it started to talk. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I'm not sure I would have wanted to wait around to see what the bush had to say. Moses. Oh, what? Who is that? Moses. Present. I mean, what are you going to say to a bush that just started talking to you anyway? Do not come any closer. Take off your sandals. You want me to take off my shoes? But what if there's pokey things on the ground? This is holy ground, Moses. Take off your shoes. Moses still was not sure whether or not he should trust this bush. I am God your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. What would we do if we just ignored a sign from God? Moses thought. So he threw off his sandals and he hid his face. What are you doing? God asked. Averting my eyes, O Lord. Well, stop it. I have something to tell you. The people in Egypt are suffering. I've heard their cries, and I've come down to bring them to the land of milk and honey. Honey, Moses thought. Moses, now go, Moses. I'm sending you to bring my people out of Egypt. Me? Are you sure you want me to go? I will be with you. Go now. Okay, Moses said. Let me get this straight. I go to Egypt and say that the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and then what? Then they're just going to go along with this? I think not. See, I think that's where you're going to ask what this God's name is. So what is it? God replied, I am who I am. You are who you are. Sure, that's going to work. That doesn't help me at all. You tell them that I sent you. I am sent me? Okay, this is never going to work. I'm supposed to go to Egypt and say, I am has sent me? Right. You gotta have something better than that. You will say to them, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent you. For this is my name. Tell them that I have heard their cries, and I have sent you to bring them to the land of milk and honey. Honey, Moses thought. And what if they don't buy that, huh? What is that in your hand? What is this in my hand? This is my sheep stick. When my sheep are bad, I hit them on the head and say, bad sheep, bad sheep. Throw it on the ground, God replied. Why? Why would you want me to throw a perfectly good sheep stick on the ground? Okay, you're the boss. So Moses throws the stick on the ground, and as most of you know, it turns into a snake. Ah, a snake, Moses cries. Moses, stop acting like a girl. Pick it up. No, it's a snake. Pick it up, Moses. You pick it up if you want it so bad. Moses, oh, all right. You're the boss. So Moses picks up the snake and it turns back into a staff. A snake, a staff. A snake, a staff. Moses, stop it. Okay, all right. Moses, just stop playing around now. Stop playing with the miraculous sign. Now put your hand in your pocket. There's not going to be a snake in there, is there? Moses asked. No, no snakes, God replied. So Moses put his hand in his pocket, and when he pulled it out, it was leprous. Ah, what's this? Give me my hand back, Lord. Give me my hand back. Put it back in your pocket, God replied. Moses did this, and this time it comes out normal. Oh, another one of those miraculous sign thingies, huh? Moses said. Now go to Egypt, and if they doubt my message, show them these signs. But Moses still doubted the Lord, and he said, I've never been good with words, Lord. Who gave man his mouth? Who makes man deaf or mute? Who gives him sight or makes him blind? You do, Lord. It is I, the Lord. Now go. I will help you speak and teach you what to say. Even then, Moses still doubted the Lord, saying, Oh, please, Lord, send someone else. Not me, Lord, not me. How many times in our lives have we said, Not me, Lord, please send someone else. Not me. Moses went on to do great and extraordinary things. He led his people from Egypt, parted the Red Sea, brought us the 10 Commandments. But why? Because he said yes. It may have taken a while, but he finally said yes. That is the only way the Lord can fill our lives and lead us to extraordinary things, if we say yes. When he calls us to his service, will we say yes? When we see our neighbors suffering, will we say yes? When we are asked to accept Jesus into our lives, will we say yes? Will we say yes? Will we say yes?
It's a story so many of us know so well that I thought maybe we needed a different reading of it. It lives in our memories around Christmas or Easter, because I can't remember which, when the young Charleston Heston, with at least one scene with his shirt off because he was that kind of guy at the time. This powerful man who stands and questions the voice of God. And the call, but in the end, it seems okay with it. But maybe you're part of another generation that knows the movie Prince of Egypt, where cartoon Moses responds in shock and awe and wonder. And both of these stories have lots of truth in them, and sometimes we know it so well we miss some of the things about it. We miss the awe and wonder. In case you've forgotten the memorable scene, the time between the memorable scene at the Nile, where Pharaoh's daughter scoops up the basket, and this moment, when he's encountering the burning bush, Moses grew up. It seemed that, while he was one of the Hebrew children, while he was raised in the house of Pharaoh, he didn't belong in either. When he was walking through the places where the Hebrew slaves were working, he watched one of the guards beating one of the slaves, and in anger, Moses killed the guard. And so Moses' life on the run began. He found a family with Jethro and married one of Jethro's daughters and started having children. Marrying and having children is kind of a sign of settling down. But he named his firstborn son Stranger, so maybe he wasn't quite as settled as he thought he was. He takes a job within the family. He cares for the sheep, a great contrast to a man who once walked the halls of a great palace. But maybe he thought that's all he could do and the best he had to offer after what had happened when he was there. Perhaps this life, with his family and his sheep, is comfortable and easy. But it seems that it wasn't all that there was for Moses. You heard the story, you know it, as Moses was caring for the sheep at the base of what was the mountain of God, a fact completely unknown to Moses at the time. He sees a bush that is on fire, but not being destroyed by the fire. And upon further investigation, not only does the bush survive the fire, the bush talks. A lot. The voice of God from the bush begins by saying, I am not unaware. I know what is happening to my children and they are not abandoned. That could be enough of a word for us today, for the world. But there's more. Moses, I have this plan. I'm going to get them out of there. I have a place all figured out. It's great. But for this plan to work, I need you. And Moses fumbled through the rest of the conversation. Maybe he tried everything to get out of it, out of being the point person on this particular plan. The first thing he asks is, who am I? And maybe you remember some of the other stories we've talked about. When Jacob met God, when they wrestled on the road, it was God who asked for Jacob's name. This is sort of typically the way things had been. And instead, Moses is talking to a plant, asking who he is. And God's response, I'll be with you. I got you. You're not alone. And I wonder if it doesn't mean I know who you are. I am going to set my people free, so you are your liberator. Who am I? Perhaps Moses also meant, what is it that I have to offer? He's a fugitive, a runaway, a traitor to his people, both the ones for whom he was blood related and the ones who raised him. He's a killer and now a shepherd. Who am I? Maybe you've asked that. Maybe you looked in the eyes of your child or grandchild and wondered, who am I to have the responsibility to raise this little person into a grown-up? Or maybe at work, who am I to have such responsibilities? Or to still have a job when so many do not? Maybe your life changed, your job changed, you lost a lover or a partner or a friend. Children grew up and moved away. When everything you thought about who you were, about that was true about yourself, everything you poured out of yourself is gone and seems to be something else. And now you stand with Moses and ask, who am I? And the voice of God whispers or shouts in the wind or in your heart or by the voice of another person, because I don't know how the voice of God talks to you. And it says, I know you. See, I have this plan, and it needs you. And I will be with you. I got you. And see, I think Moses was so much more prepared for what was about to lay ahead of him than even he thought. See, this guy was able to speak to the Hebrew slaves because his birth mother, raised him for the first handful of years. And then he'd be able to talk to Pharaoh because he grew up in that environment. And not only that, but what lay ahead of him was taking this huge mass of people and leading them out of one place and into another. Probably not someone like herding sheep. God knew the skills that Moses had. Everything about Moses' life was preparing him for what God had planned and now what God had called him to. God used Moses' life and experiences to bring about change. But it isn't just about who Moses is, because the answer didn't become independent of the question. The answer that he posed to the bush didn't come out of an independent, Moses, you are obviously this person. No. He asked the question to the bush, who are you? The answer to who Moses is was deeply rooted in who this voice was that was talking to him. But if Moses could get a handle on who this God is, then maybe he could get the rest of it figured out. So remember, we've talked about names, and names have importance, but name holds power over them. So maybe Moses wanted to have a little control over this God that was speaking out of the bush. Maybe Moses thought, if I could understand this God, I might be able to do the things the voice said I will do, or maybe better. And the voice responds with, I am who I am. And I agree with the script, it kind of sounds like a non-answer. But I wonder. And I think that God was saying, don't try to box me in. Don't try to control me. Don't try to turn me into something I'm not or less than I am. But more than just I am who I am, there's part of the translation that it's not just a God of this moment, but the divine name also means I will be who I will be. This is a God that's more than just here and now, but a God of the future. God that isn't just one thing, but kind of changing a little. I will be what I will be. There is always more to this God. There's always more to see. And one can't know who this God is if they won't sign on to God's mission. That God has for this world. And that's what Moses does. See, Moses returns to Egypt, goes toe-to-toe with Pharaoh, convinces the folks, the Hebrew slaves, to follow and leave with him, and then shepherds them slowly, the slowly forming nation, to the very edge of the land to which they had been promised. But first he had to say yes. I started my call to ministry when I was 16. I thought I was going into youth ministry, and at least in part because I had some really great youth leaders who shepherded me, and I wanted to be just like when I grew up. And I made it very, very clear to God. We had a conversation like at a burning bush ourselves, and I made it very, very clear that I wasn't going to be ordained. And that if this was supposed to happen, the God who can talk out of a bush could send me a neon sign. I never got a neon sign. Or a voice from a bush. What I got were people around me who called out the gifts that were already present in my life, who named me, named for me who I already was, who pointed out these gifts and my calling and where they met. It's actually how I ended up in seminary. It's kind of how things started. And I would be lying to you if I told you I was always certain that I didn't, from time to time, stand or kneel before God and say, I think you probably got the wrong person, and maybe you should keep looking for that backup plan. And the answer is the same for me as it was for Moses. I am with you. You're prepared for this. There is no backup plan. And you may be looking at me and say, yes, he was your pastor. Pastors are called by God to the church. And it is a thing. And it's true. But I believe each of us are called to something. At the very least, or at the very beginning, we're called to love God and love others. See, this is the great vision that God gave the Hebrew people when they were in the wilderness. It's the great commandment that comes from Jesus the Christ. How it is lived out is how we are all each different, differently called. It is how it is always changing. Well, God's mission is the same and steadfast, that all might know God and be loved. How it happens continues to be changing, continues in new and surprising ways. Because God will be what God will be. This is true in our own independent, individual lives. But I don't think we're meant to live our lives individually and alone. So it's true in our church family as well. There are these missions and calls on the life of a community. And and they're grounded in our call to love. See, it doesn't just end at the well. So who are we? I'll start. I will name the gifts of this community, as so many have done it to me. This is a church that is called and dedicated to mission and to life. A well gives life to a community. And whatever we do next, whatever we are called to be next, you will have been prepared for it. The life of this congregation will be leading to what's next, and then the next thing after that, and the next thing after that, getting us ready for the new way in which God is calling us to love. As individuals and as a group, we are like Moses. We are fallible, we struggle, we hope, we settle, and we are frail. We are ordinary people. But we are grounded in our call. And our call is grounded in who God is. And that is what makes us amazing. It is what God does for us. And it's amazing. That we are called as individuals and as a community to share the love of God with those around us, with everyone we meet, with our neighbors and our friends, with the poor and the outcast and the marginalized. We are called to love. It isn't just a call we receive once, but we receive again and again and again. And sometimes it's the same, and sometimes we need reminders of this call in our lives and in the church and in our community. Sometimes it's something new, a new path, a new unknown, a new journey, a new freedom that comes when who we are lines up with who we are called to be, with who God sees that we already are, and allows that, and we allow that God not be contained, that it cannot be named, that this God is closer than our own breaths and leads us to places we may not yet know. Friends, I am excited for the continued call of the life of this community and each person here. Will you pray with me? Oh God, you have called your servants to ventures of which we cannot see the ending, by paths as yet untrodden, through perils unknown. Give us faith to go out with good courage, not knowing where we will go, but only that your hand is leading us, your love supporting us. Through Jesus our Lord. Amen. And friends, as we enter into our next hymn, I invite you to take a moment that you truly are standing before the presence of God.